Welcome back to the Crypto Fitness Channel. This is going to be a live question and answer video. So if you have any questions about the HEX ladder Snowball or any questions about HEX in general, that is the purpose of this stream, is to answer any of those questions that anybody has. I've received a lot of questions from my most recent video, the HEX ladder Snowball. And so what I'm going to be doing first in this video is just briefly discussing quite a few of the questions that I've received and just kind of covering a few blanket questions, a lot of common questions that I've gotten. And then if there's any questions in the chat, I will be happy to address those and answer any questions that anybody might have. So let me share my screen real quick. And then also, I'm actually in the Twitter space right now with Hex Orca, and we're talking about game theory of PulseX and PulseChain. So, and I think that this is just finishing up, actually. So, or, you know, we're kind of in the tail end of this space. So I'm going to add that. Let me get this off real fast and add another. Let's go this one. So I'm just going to jump in this Twitter space. We'll start streaming this until people start flowing in. And then once people start asking questions, then I'll switch over and we can go from there. If you're in the chat, let me know that you can hear sound okay. Is the sound working? Let me know. I hope Hex Orca doesn't care I'm streaming this, but Can you hear the sound? If anyone's in the chat, let me know if you can hear the sound okay. And MJ Money, if you're in the chat, I see your comment. I'll get to it in just a little bit. Can you hear the sound okay? Let me know if you can hear the sound in the chat. All right, sounds good. Sound mine. Appreciate it. When the stake matures, can you take the interest but just keep the principal staked and it earn higher interest for the next period? I know I don't understand at all yet how it works. Can you take the interest but just keep the principal staked and earn higher interest for the next period? So the way it works with when you're staking, if you're creating a ladder and you're snowballing it, like if you just create one ladder, the next year, the first year that your stake matures, obviously that year, the following year, you can decide what you want to do with your stake. So if you made certain interest rate on it on that first year, you can either roll that over into the next stake if you want to roll it over into the next stake, or you can take profits on the yield and then reinvest your initial principal. The downside to that is that it's not going to compound as much because the T-share rate, it most likely will go up the next year. Two, HEX will probably be at a different price. So if you're restaking, it's not going to be at the same rate. And then three, you're not going to earn the same yield if you stake it, depending on how long you stake it for as well. So if you stake it for 15 years, then that's going to yield more than if you stake for just like 1 year. But the benefit of doing a ladder, a staking ladder, where you're compounding from 15 years all the way down to 1, is that it gives you that ability to have options, so to speak. So to answer the question, No, like if you just like take the interest and use that for something else, and you keep the principal staked, one, you can't restake the same amount and get the same T shares, if that makes sense. So I hope that answers your question. But that's why if you're consistently adding dry powder, new money every single month to your stakes, when they mature, if you're constantly adding to it, the point is that you're compounding those on a horizontal basis. You're compounding those laterally instead of vertically. By doing a 15-year stake, that's how you're compounding vertically, because you're gaining a higher yield on that 15-year stake. And if you do a higher amount, you're also going to gain more yield as well. So I hope that answers your question. Can you add HEX to an existing stake? No. You have to, if you want to add anything to an existing stake, you're going to have to unstake it and then do it again. But that's why, you know, that's why the snowball strategy is so effective, because essentially it gives you the opportunity to add more to your overall stakes as a whole. So that's what I'm talking about. Like when you're compounding horizontally, that's the idea, is the more you add to it, the more frequency that you're adding to the stakes and creating new ladders, it'll compound over time. Okay, thanks. Yeah, that makes sense. So the idea is to do, say, 15 separate stakes at one time to create a 15-year annual ladder. One for 1 year, one for 2, one for 3, and so on to 15. Yeah, I think you got the idea there. Let me read that again. Yeah, that makes sense. So the idea is to do, say, 15 separate stakes at one time to create a 15-year annual ladder. Yes, that's correct. So let me just, I'll switch over to let me share a different screen here. Hold on. Okay, so if just to drive the point home. So if you were to, let me go to a different one. Okay, so let's see. Where is it? Nope, not that one. Okay, here it is. So essentially the idea is like you're creating an engine of HEX that will compound over time and then will pay you on a monthly basis. So let me go back to your question real fast. So a lot of people have been confused with, because they think that, oh, I've got 15 of these stakes, but I'm going to stake it, each one of these for 1 year. That's not the idea. Like this 37 here is not a 1 year stake. Well, it is, but each one increases in years as you stake it. So that's what a ladder is. A ladder is staking it on a consecutive basis, 1 year in addition. So this 37 would be 1 year. This 37 would be 2 years. This one would be 3 years, 4 years, so on and so forth. So that's one thing that's needed to be cleared up with a lot of people. They're confusing, like if they have X amount of money, like $1,000, they're thinking, oh, I'm going to divide that $1,000 by 15, and then I'm going to do that for the entire, just stake that for 1 year at a time. That's either one thing, or what they'll do, what they think is that that's the entire amount they'll be staking. So, but that's not the idea. The idea is you're dividing the amount of money you have, you're dividing that by 15, which gives you 15 different stakes. And then from there, you're staking each one of those for a different period of time. And you're doing that on a monthly basis. You're doing that every single month. So that's the difference. So far, I've set up one 15-year stake, working on ladders after all the sacking is over. Yeah. I mean, that's a great strategy. That's what I'm doing too. So I'm waiting for PulseChain to come out and to do the rest of the stakes, just to do ladders, because it just doesn't make sense. So after you do your 555 stakes and then go back and do monthly stakes, but how does that work? The payout is not much on monthly stakes. No, get HEX. All right. So here, I need to stop this. I'm going to end the, just a second. All right. I can't concentrate without all that talking going on in the background. So, all right. So let me go back to my chart. Oh, let me turn that down. Okay. So it's not, the idea is you're not staking one of these for 15 years and then the rest you're doing monthly, right? So it's let's just use an example. So in this example, I don't know if you guys can see my calculator. Can you see my calculator? Probably not. All right. So this right here equals 37. Okay. So this is 555 hex. Okay. So right now, 555 hex is just a little bit shy of $100 because the price of hex has gone up. So with a staking ladder, I guess the bad parts of the video, the thing that I didn't clarify in the video very well, that I wish I could have gone back and clarify a little bit more, is to spend a little bit more time explaining what a staking ladder is, because a lot of people are mistaking what I'm talking about with the strategy part. So we've got to get the fundamental ideas down so that we can understand what the actual strategy is. So a staking ladder, and a lot of people know this, but just to reiterate and drive the point home so you can get that we can be on the same page as far as fundamentally what we're talking about here. A ladder is anytime you stake a given amount of hex and you divide that given amount of hex, let's call it $100. You divide that $100 into 15, we'll just say equal parts for now. Okay, there's game theory as to how you can break that up, but let's not get to that. So let's say you split up, you divide $100 by 15 equal parts. That gives us, in this case, 37 hex a piece. 37 hex added together gives you 555 hex, which at the current price would be just shy of $100. But let's just round up to $100. So you can see that I do have a stake here, right here. One of those individual stakes is going to be staked for 15 years. That is true. So I do have a 555 stake right here, this 15 years, but that's not it. I've also have a 14-year stake with the same amount at 37 hex, which is a portion, a small portion of that $100. And then I do the same thing for 13 years. I've got a 13-year stake with 37 hex, a 12-year stake with 37 hex, a 11-year stake with 37 hex, so on and so forth, all the way down to 1 year. And that total is $100. And that would be, and I would repeat this process every single month. So it's not I'm staking once for 5555 and then the rest I'm going to be staking month to month. It's I'm setting this up I'm setting this up every single month, but I'm setting myself up for the next 15 years to come. That's the difference. So that's like what a basic ladder is you're essentially just dividing whatever amount that you have to spend on HEX, and you're dividing that into 15 equal parts, and then you are distributing that evenly, or you can do it however you want, but you can distribute that in a way that's laddering. It's like a ladder, right? It's laddering down. You at the top of the ladder, you have a piece there, you have a piece, the next portion down, the next portion down, the next portion down. It's like a ladder. That's why it's called a ladder. So that is the fundamental basis of what a staking ladder is. So once you understand that basic idea of what a ladder is, well, now what we can do is we can strategize. We can use game theory to help maximize and optimize those ideas. So how do we do that? So one way is to build the frequency of how often you're doing that process. Okay, you can do that on a yearly basis. So which would be this exact chart right here. That's exactly what this chart looks like right here. This would just be if you just wanted to do this, create a ladder every single year, this is what it would look like. And this is what it would yield you. You can see right here at the current price of HEX right now, assuming that the price goes up 25% every single year, right? We can see the values here in the numbers, right? This is where HEX would be at the end of 2022, would be 25 cents. At the end of 2023, it'd be at 31 cents. At the end of 2024, it'd be at 39 cents, all the way up to year 15, if it inflated by 25% every year, would yield a $5.65 HEX. And so if you add all of these values together, at the end of 15 years, this staking ladder would be worth $6,538. And that would be released to you in 15 years, or in 5,555 days is when this stake would mature. When that stake matures, you can then decide what to do with it. And if you did nothing, if you just literally just let this play out exactly how it is, and just took profits as soon as all these stakes matured, you would have a total of $6,538 at the end of that 15-year period. But how do we maximize that? That's not just that's if we do it once a year. So how do we maximize that process? Well, you can stake more frequently. You can do it quarterly. Quarterly is good. But again, like I mentioned in the video, monthly is the most optimal way to do it. So I hope that makes sense. Thanks for explaining that. It makes sense now. Okay, yeah, I got that part. Okay, now I get it. Okay, so when you're on the second part of the ladder, so you do that from 15 to 1 or vice versa. Let's see. So when you're on the second part of the ladder, so you do that from 15 to 1 or vice versa. You can do it either way. So you can do it in reverse order. So it doesn't really change anything, right? You can set it up. You can start with a 1-year stake and then do a 2-year stake and then a 3-year stake. It works itself out to be the same. It doesn't matter if you start at 15 or if you start at 1 year. It's the same. Thanks. Now it's clear. $100 a month divided into 15 stakes every month. So after time, they'll start stacking. Yeah. So now the premise is so now the idea is if we come back to this chart. And so, okay, so this is what the stake looks like on the 15-year time frame. That's what I was referring to in the video. So, and each one of these little dots represents one of your stakes. So in 2022, you have one in 2023, 2024, and you can see the yield that each one of these stakes would provide. This is a visual representation of how that yield would play out. A 15-year stake is going to yield you a lot more than a 1-year stake. You can see this is the returns in percentages, and this is time. So if you stake for 15 years, that's part of the HEX protocol. It incentivizes you to stake for longer periods of time, and it rewards you with inflation of the token to do so. So that's why you see this stake up here in 2036 is much higher than this stake here in 2023. Now, to visualize that compounded, that's where we get this chart. Okay. And this chart shows you the value of doing this, creating one of these ladders every single year, right? On a yearly basis. This is what it would look like if you created a yearly staking ladder every year for 15 years. This is what it would look like. You would have a ladder that would end in 2036, 2037, 2038, 2039, 2040, because you're doing it every single year. And that's great, right? It's fantastic if you did that every year. And for some people, that would be a great strategy. A lot of people would mind that strategy. And a lot of people think that this strategy is better because you have more. It's just you do it one time a year, so you have less tax work to do because you're just doing it once a year. In addition to that, you're doing it in one giant lump sum. So each year you would just have one giant lump sum that would come out, and you could then decide what to do with. You could restake your interest and principal. You could add to it and then stake it again. I mean, there's lots of different things you can do with it at that point. But that's what it looks like on a yearly scale. And then this is what it would look like. Whoops. No, I don't want to share. This is what it would look like if you increased the frequency of your stakes. Whoops. Nope, that's not the slide. This is the slide. This is what it would look like if you increase the frequency of your stakes, right? You're just doing this over and over and over again, right? And instead of this, if you just have one of these, it's just on a yearly basis, right? You're doing this once per year. But if I add two of these, now I've got 24 stakes every single year for 15 years. And if you do it again, you've got 36. And then if you do it again, you've got 48, so on and so forth. And if you increase that frequency and you do that monthly, well, there's 12 months in a year. So if you completed one of these ladders every month for an entire year, you'd have 12 ladders, 12 HEX staking ladders in between each one of these yearly ladders. So in total, it'd be 12 times 15, because you've got 15 years that you can stake out, and then 12 additional staking ladders in between each one of these HEX ladders, if that makes sense. So I hope that gives you a better representation, like visualization as to what it looks like. Okay. So staking monthly in year 6, you'd have 5 stakes maturing per month. Yeah, essentially. Well, hang on. So staking monthly in year 6, you have 5 stakes maturing per month. In year 6. No, you'd have more than that. You'd have more than 5 stakes maturing. Why? Because well, I guess it depends on how you play it. So, okay, so this is where it gets very game theory like. This is where it gets very granular, and this is where a lot of your own strategy can come into play. This is where you can make it your own. This is where you can decide what you want to do with it. How do I turn that down? So after the first year, okay, let me go back to this. Okay. After the first year, okay, this is where it gets very, very powerful. After year 1, okay, so now you're in year 2, and you're at month 13. Okay. Once you hit month 13 and your first stake matures, from there, you can decide to either take profits, you can roll over your interest and your principal. You could also add any additional new dry powder that you have. So any additional income that's disposable and you want to add to your stake. After on month 13, you could add more powder to that first year stake. Additionally, if you have any other gains from PulseX, PulseChain, or any other project and you want to add even more to it, you can add more to it. Now, here's where it gets powerful. When you do this, okay, coming back to this chart, when you do this, that first year, you're now overlaying another staking ladder the exact same way. So you're creating another. If you roll it over, and let's say you do everything that I just said, you roll over that stake and you create a new stake. Now you're pushing it out 16 years, and you've got another one on top of another layer. Okay, that's what I meant by this slide here. Now you've created another layer on top of your on top of your 15 staking ladders already. Okay, so and you're because you're doing this on a monthly basis, you're creating even more the subsequent years. The amount of ladders that you will have will double and triple and quadruple. It'll just keep compounding on each other each individual year after that. So after 6 years, I mean, you could have more than 5 stakes that are being matured. That's where this gets very, very powerful. That's why I say that the monthly options is optimal, because you literally you could literally have multiple stakes maturing on a given month, and then you can take those. You can decide what to do with those multiple stakes maturing on that month, and then decide from there. Okay, I'm gonna restake again or take profits. It's just the game theory after that point is like very, very, very complex. So basically, you can make how much in the first year if you invested $100? Right, makes sense. All right, I see. So to go back to this chart, after the first year, I mean, it's not going to be that much. I mean, you're making like 12.7% APR. This chart right here would be $100. You're rewarded in HEX for staking longer and staking larger. So a 15-year stake is going to yield more than a 1-year stake. So you can see the APY on a 15-year stake is going to be 52.7%, and the APY on a 1-year stake is only 12.7%. So that would only yield you a 36% ROI. So I mean, it's not that much, right? The idea, the power behind this method, this strategy, is consistency. First off, you got to be consistent with it. You got to add new dry powder every month. And then time. You got to let it build itself over time. That's why compounding is the most powerful energy, most powerful force in the universe. That's what Einstein said. If you're just thinking like a 1-year basis, like, yeah, you're going to make 36% APY or 36% ROI, 12% APY. But I mean, who cares? You can get better gains than that in other spots of crypto. The value add for HEX is on a long-term basis. It's thinking ahead. Is there a way to put the expiring stakes in a spreadsheet to see how many are expiring each month? Yeah. I mean, so like, for example, if you were to just if you just use this chart right here, if you just use this one, and if you just every single month, you just inputted how much HEX you used, right? So like, if we're talking $100, you could multiply the price of HEX, divide the price of 100 by the price of HEX. Okay, so let's do the math. 100 divided by 20 is 500. No. Yeah, okay, so 500 hex. So because the price of hex went up, it's now 500 hex would be $100. So this is just shy, but the point is that if you, like, let's say I were to start a staking ladder right now. Well, what I would do is I'd come into this chart and then I would just enter, okay, anytime I create a ladder, what I would do is just enter it here. I'd say, okay, I created my first stake, and I'm going to do it for a year. Okay, so I did 37, and you literally just keep track of it with this right here. It'd be very, very simple. You'd have this on your Google Docs like I have here, and again, you can get a copy of this. If you don't know, you can get a copy of this. I'll link it in the description. Hang on, or I'll just post it in the chat. But you can get a copy of this document. There you go, right there. And then you can keep track of it yourself, which is what I would recommend. But also the Staker app, if you use the Staker app, it also keeps track of your metrics and it keeps track of your stakes as well. It'll tell you when they're going to mature, and it's also going to tell you how much yield you're making. It tracks all of that for you. But just to have it in multiple places and to take responsibility for your own finances, it's good to have it in something like this as well. So you have it in multiple areas. Hope that answers your question. All right, let's see here. If I put up 1,200 for the equivalent of the first year, wouldn't it yield me more profit faster for the year than averaging in month by month? If I put up 1,200 for the equivalent of the first year, wouldn't it yield me more profit faster for the year than averaging in month by month? Yeah, so basically what you're getting at is, if you do it in a lump sum, are you going to make more yield than if you break it up? And the answer is yes. So staking longer and staking larger yields you more than staking smaller and staking shorter. The trade-off, what you're trading off is you're trading off risk for options. That's the best way to put it. You're trading off risking your money locked up for a longer period of time, and you're trading that for the options and the ability to maneuver. That's the benefit of the snowball strategy, the main benefit of the snowball strategy. And specifically on larger time frames. If you're talking a year, and if you only wanted to stake a year, then yeah, doing a snowball wouldn't make much sense, because you're talking very, very small yields. You're talking very, very small compounds. So if you're just talking $1,200 and you're talking, if you only want to stake it for a year, that could be a better strategy. Again, and none of this, do I have to say, none of this is financial advice. This is just the thoughts that I've had over the course of time since I've been in HEX. I've been in HEX since early 2021. And these are the things that I've gathered and the experience that I've gained myself, and kind of the thought processes that I've gone through to discover this strategy. And other hexicans I'm sure other hexicans have thought about this strategy as well. I just haven't seen it voiced. I haven't seen it put out there. I haven't seen anybody give a name to it. So I just decided to do that and share it with anybody who might not know what this strategy entails. So good question. Staker app keeps track of stakes using your public address. Yep, that's true. Yes, thanks. No problem. So somebody had a question earlier that I didn't get to. Let me see. It was this guy, MJ Money. If I want a staking ladder max length of 10 years, after I start the 10-year stake, do I do year 9, month 11 next, or fill in the years first? Okay, I'm looking to do a 10-year snowball. This is the same guy. I'm looking to do a 10-year snowball, 120 stakes in the ladder. You can't do 120 stakes in one ladder. The most you can do in one ladder is 15. 10 years and 12 months stakes. 10 times 12, but need further info. Thank you. Always great content. Yeah. So the MJ Money, if you're still in here, the answer to that question is you can only have 15 stakes maximum in a ladder, because that's the furthest that you can. Well, I don't know. Can you? Let me think about that for a second. I wonder, could you? Yeah, I mean, technically, I guess you could. I guess you could take like $100. That's like really getting very, very grand there. If you took $100 and you divided that by, yeah, that'd be crazy. That would be nuts. If you divided that $100 by, let's say, like, if you divide it by 100, you'd have 100 different stakes in one ladder. And I guess what you'd have to do is you'd have to spread that ladder out. So you would have multiple 15-year stakes in there. Yeah, that's a little bit different approach than what I'm talking about. You're getting very granular with the vertical compounding. So if for anyone who doesn't know what I'm talking about, or if that's confusing, what he's suggesting, or what he is asking, he wants to know how to divide his money up into several more stakes. So instead of having one stake per year, he wants to have several stakes coming out every single year. So that's another fallacy or misconception that people are getting, is they're either mistaking, they're not understanding the verticality or the horizontal. So I think that's where the biggest disconnect is happening. So what I'm referring to when I talked about this strategy was just doing this once a month, just having a stake come out every single year, but doing that on the monthly basis. What he's suggesting is staking monthly, but also having the stakes come out monthly. And that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the stakes coming out yearly. So in that scenario, you have 15 stakes in one ladder. But what this guy's suggesting, MJ Money, is you could have more than 15 stakes in this ladder. There could be some advantages to that, but that's getting very, very granular. I have to think about how you could structure that, but you could essentially use the same ideas as the regular Snowball. You would add a lot more stakes in between each one of these staking pillars, or each one of these initial stakes here. So instead of having 2 right here, actually, can you guys see my mouse? Or can you guys see my mouse or just the screen? Let me know in the chat. Can you guys see my mouse moving around the screen, or is it just the screen itself? I think you guys can see my my cursor. Okay, so what I was saying is, what he's talking about is adding stakes in between these two right here. So that's getting very, very granular. And you could do that. Okay. All right. Perfect. You see a mouse? Perfect. You could do that, and that might add to the effect. But I mean, I think that's a little overkill. I think just doing it monthly and then having the stakes come out on a yearly basis, I think that'd be fine. So I hope that answers your question, MJ Money. All right. Is it beneficial to start this HEX Snowball now on ETH network despite the gas fee total, as opposed to waiting for cheap gas for PulseChain? Great question. That's personal preference, really. And the benefit of doing it now is that you will get copies of all of the ladders and all the stakes that you get on the Ethereum network. You're going to get copies of all those over on the PulseChain. So essentially, you kind of be doubling up, because you have a ladder on the ETH network and you'd have a ladder on the Pulse network. And the reason why that could be beneficial is because eventually, at some point in the future, EHEX and PHEX should reach price parity. Price parity means that they move in unison together. When PulseChain first goes live, there's going to be all sorts of fluctuations in the prices of HEX. And EHEX, the Ethereum HEX, could actually dump. In fact, I predict that EHEX will see a slight dump. Could be big, could be small, who knows? But I do think that it will go down because you're going to have a lot of bridging over EHEX into PHEX. And so the PHEX is going to start way down here because the PHEX starts at a $0 value. The market will decide what the value of PHEX will be. And then there's going to be trading back and forth, right? But eventually it will get to price parity. And when it reaches price parity, then they will move in unison together. And it also Hart's law. Hart's law says that something to the effect of like the price action or the price movement is directly correlated with the liquidity bond. So like on PulseX, when PulseX launches, there's going to be an EHEX and a PHEX bridge. So where you can trade your EHEX into PHEX. And so because those are bonded together, that will create a ratio which will move in unison with one another. And then the market will decide which one's worth more at what time. And then there will be some point where they reach parity, price parity, and they move together. So to answer your question, the benefit to starting the laddering process now and maybe really thinking about starting a ladder snowball now is the fact that you're going to get a copy of all of those ladders and all those stakes that you do. You're going to get copies of all that on the PulseChain. And that could be very valuable because you'll have literally 2 copies on both chains. So that's personal preference though. Personally, I'm waiting to do that until PulseChain just because the gas fees, I really don't want to pay the gas fees. That's the bottom line. So yes, you see a mouse. Yes, okay. PulseHexual. If you're doing a 15-year ladder and contributing to it monthly, then what months are you doubling up on? If you're doing a 15-year ladder and contributing to it monthly, then what months are you doubling up on? So when you're creating the ladder, I'm not suggesting that you like end your stake and restake with more. I'm suggesting that you create a new ladder every single month. So once you create one ladder, like this ladder here, once you create this ladder, you're not going to touch it until the following year when the first stake matures. Once the first stake matures, then what you can do is you can decide, okay, do I want to take profits on this stake? Do I want to roll over the principal and the interest? Or do I want to do something else? Or do I want to add even more to it? And then the next year when that stake matures, you can do whatever you want. You can add more to it, stake the initial principal plus interest plus more powder, dry powder. You can roll over any other gains into that next stake. And then what I'm suggesting is to create another 15-year staking ladder that month. So you're literally repeating it's just like the best way to think about it, because when you talk about it like that, it can get a little confusing because you're talking about, I think that's where a lot of the disconnect comes with a lot of people is they're like, oh, you're talking about staking for 15 years, but then you're talking about staking monthly and they're just getting confused. So the best way to describe it is like a savings account. Okay. When you have a savings account, the benefit of the savings account is you're just putting money away, right? Every single month, you're just making it a habit to put a given amount of money away in a savings account and just not touching it. So think about if you did that for an entire year, well, then at the end of the year, you'd have some money. You'd have a pool of money sitting in a bank account, which you could decide what to do with. And you'd be earning a very, very small amount of interest on it. This is just that on steroids. So if you just think about it as you're going through time, if I put $100 a month away in a savings account, or in this, we'll call it this HEX account, if you just isolate that idea alone, then you can get the concept. It's pretty easy. You're just, okay, I'm putting $100 into HEX every single month, and I'm just going to pretend that money doesn't exist. And then in 15 years, I'm going to come back and see what happens. That's the idea, like very, very fundamental idea. Now, once you're talking about building the ladder, that's where it gets a little confusing, because you can come back in a year and then decide, once your stake matures, what to do with it. So, what was your question again? Okay, so what months are you doubling up on? So the only time that you could essentially double up or increase the size of your ladders is the following year, right? So after 12 months would be when your first stake would be eligible to mature, right? Because you've got a 1-year stake, a 2-year stake, a 3-year stake, a 4-year stake, a 5-year stake, a 6-year stake, a 7-year stake, an 8-year stake, a 9-year stake, a 10-year stake, so on and so forth. Okay. So after the first year, that first stake of 1 year is going to be mature. But that same month, you're still going to assume that you're just going to put another $100 away in your savings account. So that's where the price, the amount of HEX or the amount of your stakes increase over the course of time horizontally, because you're building laterally. You're slowly building that HEX savings account. You're slowly building that on a lateral basis, because you're automatically going to put $100 away every single month. You're committing to saving $100 a month, or in this case, staking $100 in HEX a month. Now, where it gets tricky is the amount of HEX you're staking is going to vary depending on where the price of HEX is at the current time, how much the T shares cost, as well as like gains. Like if you have gains from PulseX or PulseChain or the incentive token, you could then roll those over into stake. So in theory, you could create a bigger staking mechanism the following year and continue rolling those things over for the next 15 years, whilst also giving you the ability of maneuverability and options, the ability to maneuver in the marketplace. So if something like a bull market happens, a bull run, like let's say there's a bull run in 2025 or 2026, then you can capitalize on those boom and bust cycles, because we all know that crypto is cyclical and it goes up and down, and there's bear markets and there's bull markets. So, I mean, that's the main primary benefit of doing a ladder, is the fact that you have some money to capitalize on. If it's 2025, 2026, and you're in a bull market and you want to capitalize on taking profits at the peak, well, now you can say, all right, I'm not going to roll over my stakes. I'm just going to hold on to them until the next bear market. And then once the next bear market hits and the prices of HEX have gone way lower, now you're getting more bang for your buck with your HEX. You're trading more fiat for more HEX because of those price fluctuations. That's the main value add of doing a snowball, a HEX snowball, or even doing a ladder, if that makes sense. Okay. 15 stakes plus 12 monthly 15-year stakes. Let's see. 15 stakes plus 12 monthly 15-year stakes. Yeah, I think you got that right. 15 stakes plus 12 monthly 15-year stakes. 12 monthly 15-year stakes. So I don't know if you got that right or not. Maybe that was a comment to something earlier. Okay, thanks. All right, so 1 times 5,555, and every month create a new 12 times 5555 lapping create monthly, like a checkerboard. I don't understand that. So 1 times 5,555, and every month create a new 12 times 5555 lapping creating monthly. Yeah, that's confusing. You're starting to confuse me now. I don't know. I feel like I'm explaining that like pretty decently. I don't think it's like that hard of a concept to grasp if you just focus on like, all right, I'm gonna commit to putting $100 away every single month, no matter what. If you just do that and just throw it into HEX and create like just a stake, like you could just do a stake, like some people want to, All right, let me back up. Some people argue that because you get paid more in APY on longer stakes, they're just like, well, why wouldn't you just stake for 5555 and just be done with it? Look, you can do that. If you want to stake for 5,555 days and just do that every month, you could do that. And in 15 years, you're most likely going to be sitting pretty. You're most likely going to be sitting nice. But the trade-off is the risk of you locking up your money for 15 years and not having any access to it for that time. That's the trade-off. All right. Wouldn't creating 15 stakes every month for 15 years eventually have stakes expiring monthly at some point? The stakes would be getting staggered by 1 month every month, right? Maybe not. Yeah. So that's what I was just talking about. So that's exactly what I was referring to earlier, when that's when you can start like doubling up or deciding you want to roll over those stakes on top of those stakes. So like if you're creating ladders, after the first year, those stakes will be maturing and expiring, and then you're going to have more money freed up plus your additional $100 that you committed to investing, that you're just going to do that every single month automatically. And then eventually it's just going to start, like you said, they're going to start staggering. Every single month you're going to have money freed up. So in the video, that's what I talk about when that's what I refer to when I talk about creating a money machine or a money engine. That's literally what this is you're paying yourself, you're paying now for delayed gratification for years to come way down the road. And eventually those years that will come will be monthly. If you do it monthly and creating ladders monthly, they'll be on a monthly basis. And that's what I mean, like horizontal compounding. You're literally building laterally. That's what it means. You're horizontal, lateral, you're building sideways. And then on top of that, you're building vertically up this way because you're taking advantage of the 15-year, the 5555. So it's like it creates this line of just like parabola in both directions, horizontally and vertically. The abstract thinking part of my brain needs liquid cooling for this strat. Yeah. Well, it's there's a lot of like game theory, like this story, or not story, this Twitter space that I'm in right now that I'm not really paying attention to because I'm talking to you guys. This Twitter space is with Hex Orca. We've been talking about game theory of PulseX and the PulseChain and the incentive token specifically. And it's like, fuck, it just gets your mind like moving like this. So like to get overloaded with that information, plus like this ladder snowball stuff, it can be a lot. So you got to give your brain time to cool off too. So I definitely feel that. All right. Put in $100, 1 out of 15 for 1 year. 1 out of 15 for 2 years, 1 out of 15 for 3 years, 1 out of 15 for ... 1 out of 15 for 15 years. Then next month, do it again every month. Then they mature each month. That's exactly right there. Sound Mind TV, you got it. That's it. That's it right there. And you can see over the course of time that if you do that every month, that compounds in and of itself. So whoever's in the chat, that's literally it right there. You got it. Yep, makes sense to me now. Perfect. Once you build your ladder, every stake should be a 15-year long stake. Yeah, I mean, if you want to do it that way, Brisology, yeah, sure. I mean, if that floats your boat, like, that's great. I mean, and this is kind of what I was talking about earlier, is there's a lot of people who think we'll just throw that entire $100 into a 5555 stake and just be done with it. Sure. Yeah, if that works for you, do it. I mean, I think that's good. DYOR chain. Hi, at Crypto Fitness. So what you were saying is that at the end of a year, we'll have 12 stakes, and as they mature, we keep adding more money into them. How do you estimate the earnings of each stake? So I posted a link to the Google Docs that I used. It is this right here. Not sure if you were here for this earlier. This will give you a good idea as to keeping track of all your stakes. You can input all these numbers, all these figures, and it will help you calculate what APY you're getting. And you can come in here and change any of these numbers. So you can assume this chart specifically assumes that the price of HEX is going to increase by 25% every single year, which is very, very conservative in the space of crypto. If I do say so myself, that's like very, 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 very doable, especially with something like HEX, which is the best performing asset in the crypto space. So you can come download this, and there's actually, I have several different scenarios for this. So this would be like the mild case. The mild case would inflate at 33% every single year. And so if you forecasted the price of HEX at the end of year 15, it would be roughly $14.84 if the price of HEX increases by 33% every year. So this chart here will give you a good idea and a good representation of like how to project these things. Another good little tool is this site right here, hexladder.web.app. And this will, you can literally come in here and it says you can do the same thing. I can go 555 HEX. If I want to start the ladder, you can just come in here and literally do everything. If I want to start the ladder on the 8th, which is today, the total length of ladder in days, if I want to stake for 5,555 days, end date of the first stake, this will automatically put like input, or it should at least, end date of first stake. Yeah, so this will automatically input. So this will tell you, okay, your stake is going to end, your first stake in the ladder will mature on 2/8 of 2023. And you can see that here. Okay, so you can use this. Okay, this is a little bit more user friendly. It's a little bit more noob friendly. If you want to get more granular with it, that's when I recommend using this Google Sheet. I prefer this Google Sheet just because there's more data into it. But if you just want to like kind of just run through things simply, then this Staker app or this hexladder.web.app is good. And this will tell you like the minimum stake length in days, 365. The end of your ladder would be in April 25th of 2037. The number of stakes. So you could input however many stakes you wanted to do. You know, in this case, you could do 15. Do it once per year. And then it gives you all the data here. And then literally it would tell you when all your stakes matured. And it would tell you the effective HEX you'd be gaining as well. So if you stake 37 HEX or 555 HEX, I should rather, you'd be earning this much per year until year 15. So this is a good, I like this site. It's good. It'll help more newbie investors who are just maybe new to HEX. It'll help them visualize it. But if you want to get more granular with it and really see like the power of what this can do, then I linked this chart in the chat. So hope that answers your question. Let's see here. Are you concerned about future PulseChain fees rising in the future? Won't that make staking this often very expensive? Yeah. I mean, eventually, at some point, that could play out that way, right? I mean, there could be high gas fees on the Pulse network, the PulseChain, as more users come into the ecosystem, and as Ethereum users come into the ecosystem, naturally you're going to have more transactions, and more transactions means higher fees. Slightly. The thing you got to keep in mind is that the PulseChain was built for this. It was built to handle high volume transactions. So naturally, the fees are still going to be lower than where Ethereum is at now, because the PulseChain was literally designed for high throughput. In addition to that, when you have the Ethereum chain, which is already clogged up and nasty, and then you have the PulseChain comes out, a lot of that liquidity is going to flood into the PulseChain. And that's going to even out, first off, Ethereum. It's going to help alleviate that pressure, the transaction pressure on Ethereum. And it's also going to increase the amount of pressure on the PulseChain. The difference is that Richard Hart is building PulseChain on a proof of stake consensus network, and it's designed to handle this high volume from the get-go. It's in the code. So it's literally ETH 2.0 without, before ETH 2.0. So while the fees could rise, I don't think the fees will ever be as expensive as where Ethereum is at now, unless we get like the entire world onboarded into the PulseChain ecosystem, right? And then maybe. But my ultimate slam dunk argument to that question is if you go ahead and take advantage of these ladders, creating these snowballs every single month and essentially having them mature every single year and just repeating that process over and over again, eventually at some point, you're probably going to be a HEX whale because the compounding effect it's drastic. So in 15 years or 20 years or 30 years, if you're a HEX whale or a PulseChain whale or a PulseX whale, are you going to care that much if the gas fees are high? If you can afford them, no problem. I would argue no. I think that's like the best argument. It's like you're not going to care. It's like the ETH whales now. The ETH whales now, they don't give a shit about the gas fees. They're like, yeah, that's pennies. That means nothing to me. That's why they're able to yield farm and stuff on the Ethereum network now. That's the difference. I'm older, so I treated mine like social. I'm older, so I treated mine like social started at 5555 and worked my way back to 60-day from now. Plus, I did short-term stakes to pay for it all over the last year. That's good. Yeah. So now this is where we can start getting into deeper strategy. Now that we have kind of a fundamental basis, a fundamental idea of like what a snowballing ladder is and how to do it. Now we can talk about specific strategies and tailor them to different investing profiles. So for example, I think I actually have a picture. No, not there. Let me see. I have a screenshot. Is this? Nope, not that one. It's here. Okay. Okay. Let me see how I can put this up on the screen. Oh, you know what? I have the chart actually. I have the chart here. All right, let me just go to the chart here. Just a second. Okay, here it is right here. Okay, so this is where you can start talking strategy. And I mentioned this in the video of front loading and back loading your ladders. Front loading is this right here. Okay, and I came up with these specific numbers. This is like an aggressive front loaded ladder. Okay, I'm gonna start this off like very basic. This is gonna be for anybody who wants to participate, who wants to have a little bit of cheddar staked for 15 years, 555 stake, but it's mainly designed for anybody who doesn't necessarily want to risk their capital being locked up for the longer periods of time, 10 plus years. Because in crypto, especially 10 years is a very, very long time in crypto. A lot of things can happen in 10 years. So I get why people wouldn't want to stake for 15 years. Personally, I'm all for staking for 5555. I will be staking for 5555. Currently, I only have a 10-year stake right now. That's just because of the gas fees. But if you don't want to stake for 15 years or even 10 years, this strategy will allow you to still have a little bit of money and still like take advantage of the 15-year APY and the 15-year the benefit of staking for a long period of time. But it also gives you the flexibility of having most of your money up front. So in this example, I broke it down to 50% coming out after the first year. So you'd have, let's say you had $100, you'd have $50 that would come out after year one. So on month 13, this stake here would mature, and that $50 would become freed up. You could do whatever you want with that $15 plus any APY, any interest that you accrued, and your total ROI. From there, the next year, on year 2, you'd have half of that, half of the half. So you'd have 25%, an additional 25% come out year 2. So now you're at 75% of your money is out after the second year of your stakes. So, and again, you're still taking advantage of like some larger percentages, larger returns on the second year because you staked for 2 years instead of 1. But it's not as much as the first year. You got more money freed up the first year. And then each subsequent year after that, from year 4 to year 11, you'd have 2.5% of your money coming out each subsequent year after the second year. So you have 75% of your money like that within 2 years. And then again, 2.5% would come out the next, what is that? 8 years. The next 8 years, you'd have 2.5% come out each year for the next 8 years. And then you could decide to do with that. So now you're getting better returns, better APY, but now you have less money in these stakes. And then the final 4 years, 5 years in the through stakes 11 through 15, you've got 1% of your money each year coming out. And that gives you the peace of mind to know, like, look, I'm delaying gratification somewhat to some degree. So I have some peace of mind knowing that, like, if I'm not around in 15 years, I've got something that I'm leaving behind. If you've got family, if you've got kids, whatever the case is, or if you just don't want to have your money staked for 15 years. And then from there, you're happy because you know that you got the majority of your money out early, but you still made some APY on it. So that's for anybody who doesn't want to stake for a long period of time. And this is a more aggressive way to take profits. This is if you like want your money, most of your money back very early. I also constructed a sheet here, a table, to where it's a little more gradual. So in this example, it's still a front load. You're still front loading your ladder with the amount of money that you have. Okay. Except it's just to a lesser degree. So only 10% would come out after the first year. The next, what is that, 6 years? The next 6 years, you'd have 9% each year come out. Year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, year 6, and year 7. You'd have 9% that year. And then each additional year after year, 8. So year 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 15, you would have 1% less each year come out. So you'd have 8% in year 8, 7% in year 9, 6% in year 10, 5% in year 11, 4% in year 12, 3% in year 13, 2% in year 14, and 1% in year 15. So 10% all the way down to 1% would come out, with the exception of the first, like, year 2 through year 7. You'd have the same amount, because that's these totals equal 100. It took me a while to come up with those percentages because I had to break them down in my head. But this accomplishes something similar. It's just to a more gradual scale. So you're still taking more of your profits out at an earlier stage in years 1 through 8, and then a lesser part of your money coming out in years 9 through 15. And that's what a front-loading ladder looks like. And you could repeat this process, again, just like the regular ladder snowball, if you just had an even amount come out, right? So if we go back to, not this one. If we go back to this chart, this is just an even amount of HEX. This makes it easy to visualize. You got an even amount of HEX here that you will have coming out years 1 through 15. With the front load, you're just weighting that. You're just changing these values, these numbers, based on how much money you want back at what time. So if you want most of your money back early, you put it, through years 1 through 7, 8, 9, 10, and the rest in the subsequent years. And then backloading is literally the exact opposite. So if you have super high delayed gratification and you really want to try and maximize your gains as much as possible, all you'd have to do is just flip these numbers around, right? You flip these numbers on their head. So 50% of your money would come out year 15, 25% of your money would come out year 14, and then 2.5% of your money would come out years 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 5, 4, or whatever. And then the last 1% would come out years 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's what a backload is. So I hope that is a little bit easier to understand. Hope that answers your question, Samuel. Let's see. What do you actually think HEX will go up in percentage per year? That's a good question. It's I mean, it's all speculation at this point. I believe that we could see $100, maybe even $1,000 HEX at some point in the future. That's crazy. That sounds crazy. If you look at market cap, that sounds like just no way. But I truly believe that that's like how powerful this vehicle is. How much money have you put into HEX already? I don't discuss my own financials. I suggest you don't either. Goal was to get it finished before Snapshot just finished. Yeah. So if you're talking about your ladder, yeah, it's a great strategy because you're going to get copies of all those ladders on the PulseChain. So you're literally like, it's almost like you're double dipping. So that's good for you. When we get to month 13 and our first stake is due to expire, that is when we are done with $100 and can use our principal to restake. I would imagine $100 won't get you much after price appreciation. Yeah, so after the first year, so if we go back to this, like this chart here literally can answer all the questions. If you just download this chart and input the numbers for yourself, you'll see it's quite self-explanatory. So after the first year, right, this 37 hex right here, it's going to mature. That 37 hex is going to be freed up, and in year 13, you can decide to do whatever you want with it. So you can invest a new $100 plus this 37 hex. You could roll over the principal with it. You could roll over gains with it. But ultimately, yeah, if the price goes up, if the price of hex goes up to 25 cents, well, now you're not getting 37 hex for the price of your $100. If you break it up, now you're getting a lesser amount. So if we take a calculator, right, and we I hope you guys can see my calculator. So if you take $100 and you divide that by 18 cents, that gives you the 555 hex divided by 15 equal parts. Okay, that gives you the 37. So in addition to that, if the price of hex goes up the following year, after year 1, your $100 is only going to yield you, divided by 25 cents, it's only going to yield you 400 hex now. And 400 hex divided by 15 equal parts would give you only 26 hex. So there is a level of diminishing returns with the strategy, but that's just the trade-off. That's just the trade-off of having the ability to maneuver and the ability to have options as your stakes mature. And I argue that it's better because you can take profits on peaks when the market pumps hard, and then you can hold on to those gains and then wait for the price to go into a bear market and buy back at the lower prices, just like you would do it in typical cryptocurrency market cycle theory, because crypto is cyclical. It's the same thing. Like HEX is in crypto, it's going to be cyclical as well. So that's the advantage of using the HEX ladder. Is like, yeah, each year you're going to have diminishing returns as far as how much HEX you're going to get for your $100, because the price of HEX will probably go up. But then in the overall grand scheme of things, in the macro perspective, you can take profits at times where people can't take profits if they're just locked up in a 15-year stake. They can't take profits because they're locked up in a 15-year stake unless they want to pay penalties. So that's the advantage of having the ladder, is so that you have money freed up along the way so that you can take profits in those bull runs and then buy back lower in the bear markets. That's the basic idea. So, but that's a good insight. Good insight. You're right. If I a whale, I don't care. Yeah, yeah. Like it's like if you're a whale, like you don't give a flying shit about what the fees are going to be, right? Because you can afford it. It's no big deal. Social Security. Not sure what you mean. I thought the PulseChain fees are a fixed percentage rate total, fixed percentage rate per transaction. No, I don't think so. Richard Hart has said himself that the PulseChain fees could be as high as the Ethereum fees one day, but that one day could be very, very far down the future when the PulseChain has massive network effect like Ethereum or even more than Ethereum. Because think about this. If you transferred all of the network effect and all the users and all the liquidity, if you just took them all from Ethereum and once the Pulse chain goes live and you put them all on the Ethereum, the Pulse chain. So if you pretended like Ethereum never existed and you took all that liquidity and all the user and all the network effect and you just dumped it onto Pulse chain, the chain would run much smoother and much more efficiently because the Pulse chain is a fork of Ethereum and it's already an improvement. It's already a proof of stake consensus network. And it's designed for higher throughput and a higher transaction speed. It's designed for all these things before it even comes to market. So literally at the drop of a hat and at the very get-go, Ethereum or the Pulse chain is going to run better and more efficiently than what Ethereum is at now. So in that sense, the fees, that's why I say I don't think the fees are even going to be nearly as high as where Ethereum's at now, because like the Pulse chain is such a big upgrade from Ethereum already. It can just handle a lot more. This sheet is dope, dude. Thanks for sharing the sheet and your knowledge. I'm very grateful. Yeah, my pleasure. PulseXual. It is the Google sheet. It's a freaking game changer, man. It'll help you it's fucking sick. At first, I thought you were like, this sheet is dope, dude. Like, this shit is dope. I thought you were like, yo, this sheet is dope, bro. But you're actually talking about this Google sheet. That's funny. I changed HEX price increase per year to 50%, and my mind exploded. Yeah. Oh, let me show you something, bro. If you think that's crazy, look at this. So these are projections. This is the whole premise of the title of my video. If you did $100 a month, okay, at the time I shot the video, the price of HEX was 18 cents. So if you took 555 HEX, which at the time was $100, okay, price of HEX has gone up to 20 cents now, so it's not quite 555. But if you assume that the price of HEX increases by 75% a year, this is like the moon case, the absolute fucking rocket ship to Pluto. If you assume that it goes up 75% every year, after 15 years, the price of HEX would be at $1,443.76. And that would yield, literally having one ladder would yield you $2,955,275 at the time that this ladder matures. So the reason why I said that $100 it turns into $2,955,275 a month was because that's the whole premise of my argument of the monthly Snowball staking ladder. If you do that monthly, you're literally yielding yourself to almost $3 million every month just from $100 in 15 years. And of course, assuming that the price of HEX goes up 75% every single year. But like just look at those numbers. It's like, fuck, man. It's like this shit is literally going to create billionaires and probably trillionaires too. And with the Pulse chain ecosystem and the PulseX, like there's going to be some trillionaires out there, man. Not just Richard Hart. There's going to be some fucking massive ass whales out there. Since the t-shirt rate gets less with every stake, could you take 1,200 USD and do you could you take 1200 USD and do your 15-year monthly stake all at once instead of waiting until the next month for every ladder? Yeah. I mean, like, you can do it any way you want. Like, you don't have to do it on a monthly basis. If it doesn't suit you, if you think that's too much work for you, if you'd rather just make the long yield, yeah, you could literally just do it on a yearly basis or a quarterly basis, and you can make a larger yield than if you just do it monthly. So it's just personal preference, but you're essentially doing the same thing. It's just you're just doing it with in one lump sum or in maybe 4 lump sums per year instead of on a monthly basis. The argument that I made in my video is that you won't be able to participate in market volatility, market fluctuations as efficiently as if you do it on a monthly basis. Because if you just do it once a year, like if you took $1,200 and you just did a ladder for 15 years, basically what you're doing is you're giving yourself one chance per year to decide how to maneuver your money. Okay. So in that 1 year, because you just have one stake that's going to mature if you just do it once a year, it's a larger lump sum, and you're probably going to gain more APY with your total amount of USD than if you broke it up, because you're staking a larger amount and you're staking it for longer. But the trade-off is you can't time the market as well. So let's say there's a bull run 1 year, and let's say your stake matures in December, but let's say that the bull run happens in May. Well, now you're fucked because your stake doesn't mature until December, and the market cycle peak was in May. Now you can't take profits on your HEX with your matured stake because you missed the time. If your stake had matured in like March, then yeah, you could have taken profits on it. But the fact that you did it once a year, that with that one lump sum, yeah, you're getting some larger APY and you're earning a little bit more in yield. But again, you can miss the market cycles. So the monthly, and to a lesser degree, I mean, you could do it on a quarterly basis and still maybe time the market, but still, crypto moves very fast. I mean, within a couple of days, things can pump 50% and dump 50% or more within a couple of days in crypto. It's very volatile. I'm sure you all know that. So that's the whole point of the monthly, participating in monthly, is that it just gives you it gives you more options, and it gives you the ability to maneuver better, more efficiently. And that's why I argue for the ladder snowball on a monthly basis, why it's the most optimal and optimized way to do this. Now, there could be a scenario where, like, somebody in the comment section of my video brought up the fact that maybe there's going to be some bots that will stake automatically for you and do this process for you, like on a weekly basis or a daily basis, which would be fucking crazy. But if you could automate that process, I mean, it could be worthwhile. I'm not sure. I'd have to think about it, and you'd have to like really dig deep into that. But I mean, that'd be nuts. Think about having a new ladder mature every single day. That'd be nuts. That'd be just fucking crazy. I just calculated out how many HEX I needed to stake to get 30,000 HEX per month out every 30 days until 5,555. And then every 30 days, I do another, but I use my unstaked HEX and stake it like 10 to 30 days. Yeah, I mean, see, that's the cool thing about like this strategy is like, there's going to be methods and there's going to be things that when these stakes mature, there's going to be strategies and game theory for everybody, like in their personal situation. There's going to be really cool game theory and really cool methodologies and strategies that will be developed as these stakes mature. So let's just say like 1,000 people start implementing this strategy with HEX, creating the ladder snowballs. There's going to be, out of those 1,000 people, there's going to be several tens or hundreds of people doing different strategies when the stakes mature. Like what you're saying, like if after the 5,555 day stake matures, maybe you stake it another 10 to 30 days. Like there's a lot of cool different things that you can do when your stakes mature. And that's why I preach options and maneuverability. That's the whole point of why the monthly ladder is optimal. But again, it's personal preference. Like if you're just too lazy and you don't want to do it monthly, do it quarterly. If that's too much, do it yearly. I mean, the point is just to get your money moving, to pay for it and get good income, especially if HEX goes way up. Yeah, that's the idea. It's like sacrifice now and reap the rewards way down the line. And snapshot should be double it to 60,000 hex. Yeah. So if you have copies on the PulseChain and the ETH chain, you'll get copies on both, and you'll be double dipping essentially. And when the price parity moves in unison, I mean, who knows? Like maybe the price of HEX mirrors each other perfectly at some point. You're gonna be sitting real fucking pretty if you do this. Thank you so much for doing this Q&A. I appreciate it a lot. You cleared up my questions. Yeah, my pleasure. SoundMind TV. Dang, 17K on your Snowball video. Well done. Yeah. Yeah, that shit blew up. It's making some noise in the community. Yeah, my God, what Richard created. Seriously, we are all indebted to Richard. I cannot see the link to the HEX ladder or Google Sheet in description. I'll post it again. Now that you have HEX, do you even need pre-workout? Yeah, maybe not. I mean, pre-workout's still nice. But, whatever. You were in the Lost Boys. So were you in the Lost Boys? No, I wasn't in the Lost Boys. But like I mentioned in the comments, what's wrong with getting lost every once in a while? To go way off the deep end, funding Jim implied that there may be future folks of Pulse and ETH with whole new airdrops. Like, seriously, dude, what is this? What? Funding Jim implied that there may be future forks of Pulse and ETH with whole new airdrops. Yeah, that's going to be crazy. That's going to be nuts. So anyway, I had written down a few other questions of people, like some common questions people had. Let me see, where did I put them? Let me see. Where the hell did I put those questions? All right, they're right here. All right. So let's see. Mistaking monthly staking with monthly laddering. We covered that. What if the price of HEX crashes? So somebody in my comments asked, what if the price of HEX crashes? My answer to that is like, yeah, well, what if the price of the dollar crashes? What if the stock market crashes? What if, if it rained cats and dogs tomorrow? It's like, it's all the same. If the dollar crashes, everyone's fucked. If the price of HEX crashes, everybody who's in HEX, is fucked. I don't think it's going to crash. I think most people in the HEX ecosystem, the Richard Hart community, they're pretty confident it's not going to crash. Where is the additional interest coming from? So the interest is coming from inflation of the HEX token. Let me see. So this guy, of course, but maybe, in my comment section, he brought up another disadvantage. It's just the shorter your stakes are, the higher the opportunity cost of missing out on longer stakes. So we kind of discussed that already. It's like, I think somebody mentioned this earlier, like why, you don't want to, well, it depends, but essentially if you skip if you're having ladders that are maturing at certain times, there's opportunity cost as to those staking. There's opportunity cost in those stakes maturing. So, and he also mentioned, I'll just read his, correct me if I'm wrong, but a disadvantage of staking monthly is a delay of restaking the profit / yield because you skip a day at the start and the finish. Let's say you finish a stake. How quickly is the new stake running and official after the day it's admitted? So the shorter duration of a stake, the more of these intermittent days you lose. At a stake duration of a month, you lose 1 days every 30 days, or 13 per year, 3.56% of all days. These delays increase as the stake duration drops. So at weekly stakes, you lose 1 day every week, 53 per year. That's 14% of the days, and there has to be a balance between the two, compounding yield and lost days. I thought that longer is always better, even if you restake the monthly, quarterly. So is it the best to stick to long stakes, yearly or more, and perhaps smaller intermittent stakes or more monthly income? I thought the only reason to stake monthly or quarterly is because one wants to have some kind of income every month or quarter. So he's basically saying that there's opportunity cost in not having your HEX staked for a long period of time. And that's essentially the idea. And I agree with that. I think that there is opportunity cost with not having your HEX staked for any given amount of time. So for example, if I leave my HEX locked up in a 15-year stake, and then I have so let's say I do two things. If I do two things, if I have one stake that's for 15 years, and then I have another stake for 1 year, and then I stake that 1 year every year for 15 years, the 15-year stake is going to outperform the 1-to-1 stake every single time. And there's opportunity cost in the sense that every time you unstake a mature stake, there's a little bit of a delay when you first start one of your stakes. There's like a 1 day delay where you don't start minting the rewards. You don't start gaining the rewards until the following day. So there is some time. There's a little time gap there. And the more you stake and unstake, the more those time gaps accrue. And that's true. But what he was misinformed was he was assuming that I was having stakes that were going to mature every single month. And that does happen once you compound them after the first year. But I don't have multiple stakes coming out the first year. It's not like I'm creating 15 stakes that are going to end after 1 year. That's not what I'm doing. I'm creating 15 stakes and I'm spreading them out over 15 years. So I'm going 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So I'm only, instead of having 53 days per year that I'm losing out my HEX being staked, I'm losing one day out of the year because I'm creating a staking ladder of 15 stakes over a 15-year time period. So I hope that makes sense to you. Let me see. I got you now. You want that steady stream of ending stakes. Wow, now I get the pumpamentals. Yeah, exactly. You want to set yourself up so that you have these stakes ending in years to come, so that literally is just bam, paying you every single month, and you're like, you can either live off the income, live off the interest, restake it, for an additional 15 years if you want to. And if you just the powerful thing about this is if you just commit to doing this every single year, every single month, every single year for a couple decades, you could literally set yourself up not just for you, but for your kids, your kids' kids, and your kids' kids' kids. Like it's seriously so powerful. Hi, mate. Great strategy. Great video. My question is, do we wait to do this until PulseChain is launched? How would you play the strategy if you have approximately 400,000 liquid HEX to deploy? Well, again, none of this is financial advice. The HEX Pulse dude, my brother. So take this with a grain of salt. I can only, tell you what I would do if I have 400,000 liquid HEX to deploy. As far as your strategy to like when PulseChain is going to be launched, personally, I'm going to be waiting for the PulseChain to launch before I start setting up any of these snowballs. However, there was a gentleman earlier, I can't remember who it was, who is already staking and already doing these ladders now on the Ethereum chain. He's just paying the gas fees. The benefit to that, I'm sure you didn't know this already, most people do. The benefit to doing that is that you're going to get copies of all those on the PulseChain when it comes out. And you're essentially doubling up your opportunity to have multiple ladders and multiple stakes. And, it's really personal preference to decide, like, I want to have those double stakes, those double ladders on both chains, or I just want to wait to set them up until the gas fees are just minimal. So it's personal preference as far as that goes. Personally, if you're asking me what I'm personally going to do, I'm personally waiting for the PulseChain. And then how would you play this strategy if you have approximately 400,000 liquid HEX to deploy? So that depends on a couple things. If I had that money, if I had that much HEX to play with, first I would come up with the strategy in which I want to deploy that. So I need to figure out, one, do I want to just stake all of that at one time? Like, do I want to break up 400,000 HEX? Let me just do the math real fast. So 400,000 HEX divided by 15. That's 26,666 HEX. So you know what? I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to go ahead and input this in this calculator for you. So 26,666. All right. So if I had 26,666 HEX, okay, what I can do, that's okay, 400,000 HEX right there. That's the total. So you have to ask yourself how you want to deploy that 400,000. Do I just want to do it in one ladder? Okay, that's the first question. The second question is, do I want to break it up? Do I want to split this 400,000 up even further? Meaning, do I want to split that 400,000 up on a yearly basis and then slowly accrue it over the course of time? So I could take that 400,000, divide that by 12 months, and now I've got 33,333 HEX every single month that I can create a new ladder with. Does that make sense? So the way you could set it up either way, or you could set it up for a further time frame. I could say, okay, I've got 400,000 HEX. Okay, I'm going to divide that by 15 years, and then I'm going to divide that by 12 months and say, okay, now I've got 2,222 HEX every single month that I can apply to the snowball strategy or the ladder strategy. So there's several ways you can play it. You have to ask yourself how you want to deploy that HEX. Do I want to do it in one lump sum? Do I want to do it like divided up over the course of an entire year and then start using this strategy? Do I want to break it up over the course of 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? Like, how far do you want to spread out this money? How far do you want to spread out this HEX over the course of time to then start creating these snowballs is the question. That's what you have to decide first. Once you decide that, let's say that you land on, I don't know, let's say you want to, over the course of this next year, over the course of 2022, that's how frequent you want to deploy this HEX. So then in that case, I would take 400,000. I would divide that by 12 because there's 12 months in a year. And that gives me 33,333 HEX every single month to create a new staking ladder. So what I would do is then I would take this 3,333 and then I would divide that by 15 because I'm creating a staking ladder of 15 individual stakes. And that would give me 2,222 HEX per stake. So if we have 2,222 HEX per stake, now I can input these into this calculator. Okay, and then I would create this snowball. I would start creating this ladder right here with this amount of HEX. So now I've got 400,000 minus 33,300. So now I've created one staking ladder. Let's say this month you created this staking ladder. Okay, you're going to keep track of it in this sheet, right? You'll make a copy of this. And then next month, now you have another 33,333 HEX to do another staking ladder. And then you can repeat that process. So that's one way to do it. The other way to do it is if you just said, okay, I've got 400,000 HEX. Well, that's 4 million. I've got 400,000 HEX. Now I'm going to divide that by 15 stakes. And that gives me 26,666. 26,666 HEX. Okay. And now if I just want to do one ladder, you could do it that way. Okay, this is just one staking ladder. Now you've got your entire 400,000 that's going to be staked out. You're earning yield on your entire 400,000 right now. That's if you created a ladder right now. You could do it that way. So that's two scenarios for you that you could take advantage of. I hope that answers your question. What do you think Pulse and PulseX price will open at? That's way too hard of a question to answer. I mean, it's completely up to the market, and they're starting at zero, so it's like it's hard. It's so hard to say because there's so many variables that go into it. You've got liquidity mining. You've got liquidity pairing. You've got trading. You've got swapping from HEX over to PHEX. Right, that's going to influence the price of HEX. You're going to have people who want to switch their PulseX over into PulseChain, so there's going to be swapping there. So it's like to know like price right out the get. It's like it's just way too hard to even like speculate on. Do you have to go without income for a period of time before you can start making a monthly/quarterly income, i.e., to use set and then start taking profits in say 2 years, etc.? Do you have to go without income for a period of time before you can start making a monthly, quarterly income, i.e., to use set and then start taking profits in say 2 years? I'm not sure I understand your question fully, but I think what you're getting at is there like is there a period of time in which you have stakes not maturing? And the answer is yes. If that's your question, the answer is yes. So assuming you do this, let's say you do this for 12 months straight. If you do this for 12 months straight, in those first 12 months, there's no stakes maturing. I mean, unless you set up like a monthly stake that like you have a 30-day stake or a 60-day stake or a 90-day stake or a 120-day stake. You could set like a smaller stake up like that, and then you can have those stakes mature. But if you're talking about the strategy that I'm talking about, where you're creating a new ladder every single month on a yearly scale, then your first stake that would mature would be 12 months from the time you start. And so during that first 12 months that you start, you're not going to like, you wouldn't have any income coming in. You wouldn't have any because you wouldn't have any stakes maturing at that point. So I hope that answers your question. It was a little difficult to understand. Michael Zells. Do you have an idea on how you will be able to buy PHEX, PulseX, and PulseChain on release? Do you think you will be able to avoid an ETH on-ramp, maybe just using USDC? I don't know if I understand that. Do you have an idea on how you will be able to buy PHEX, PulseX, and PulseChain on release? Do you think you will be able to avoid an ETH on-ramp, maybe just using USDC? So you're talking about like liquidity bridging over to the PulseChain. So for 2 days, there's going to be, before any bridges, there's going to be ratio trading. But after that, like the only way to bring liquidity onto the PulseChain will be through Ethereum. That's the only way. The only onboard, the only on-ramp to bringing liquidity into the PulseChain as of right now, or I guess as of the time of release, is going to be through Ethereum. Until there's some sort of fiat on-ramp and off-ramp built into the PulseChain, that's just how we have to do things. So if you're asking, like you'll have to pay one gas fee to onboard new dry powder into the Pulse ecosystem, if that's what you're asking. So to buy HEX, PHEX, PulseX, and PulseChain, there's going to be ratio trading for a couple days before any of the bridges are able to bridge in liquidity from the Ethereum chain. And so you'll be able to switch, you'll be able to like ratio trade some of those things, like PulseX into PulseChain or vice versa, PHEX as well. So that is on the table if you want to. It's all speculation at this point, and it's risky because you could get a shitty ratio if you do it that way, but it's possible. Should you try and get, say, an X amount of T-share, or does this not matter? I.e., if it works out only to be, say, half T-share each month, doesn't that matter? Yeah. So if we're talking about the inflation and earning inflation, the only thing that matters is your T-share rate. That's the only thing that matters. The T-share rate is what determines how much HEX you're yielding. So yeah, you absolutely want to buy up T-shares. T-shares is like the prime thing that drives HEX. So, and in theory, the price of the T-shares are going to diminish over the course of time. Shit, hang on. So the price of the T-shares are going to increase, well, should increase over the course of time. So that means that each time you stake, your stake matures. And if you restake the exact amount, you're not going to get the same T-share rate as the previous year. So that's another thing to consider and to keep in mind, is that every subsequent year you're creating these staking ladders, the T-share rate is going to go up, which means it costs more money to acquire a T-share. So the earlier you can do this laddering, the better. So that may, affect your decision whether you want to start doing it now and just pay the gas fees on Ethereum and then get copies, or just wait to the PulseChain. I honestly think just acquire as much HEX, PHEX, PulseChain, and PulseX, and just shut your computer off and enjoy. Check back in a couple of years. That's a great strategy. I mean, the people that get rich in crypto are the people that buy and hold, and they buy at a very early stage and they just hold. That's the best way. Can you show us an example of what it looks like if you are starting with, say, 100,000 liquid HEX rather than just 100? This would be helpful, as you can then work it up from there. Yeah, I kind of went over that with this scenario, the 26,000. That was 400,000 HEX. So go back, if you go back and watch this, I literally did that for you. So there's this hexagon named Model T Maximalist that created a 0 to 100 stake strategy, HEX stake strategy. He uses a combination of monthly staking to set up quarterly and annual stakes. Then he sets up a 15-year ladder. That's interesting. Send me that. If you have the video, or I guess I can just look it up. Let's see. What is his name? Shit. Model T Maximalist. If anyone's curious, I don't live in Canada. I just use a VPN. Model T Maximalist, HEX is a revolution. Let's see. HEX tutorial, Hexagon's guide, HEX crypto tutorial, HEX crypto talk for beginners, HEX narratives, what values are enshrined in the HEX code. Is this the right one? I think this is the right one. Let's see. Coinbase tutorial, HEX crypto talk, HEX crypto talk for beginners, HEX narratives, what values are enshrining the HEX code, HEX pulse, my HEX staking strategy explained. This is probably it right here. Or no, HEX strategy 0 to 100, leveraging DCA, holding, saving, getting paid in crypto with this model. All right. Yeah, let me put those to my watch later. Watch later. I'll check those out. Thanks for sharing that. See what he says. All right. Thanks heaps. Yep, love it. Yeah, good thoughts, mate. Also would have this on both chain, ETH, and PLS. Really enjoy this. Thanks. Yeah, my pleasure, man. Just glad to help do my part in the Richard Hart's ecosystem. His 15-year ladder is a 5,555 ladder in which you stake $100 for 5,555 every year for 15 years. What? Are you talking about the same guy? Okay, so his 15-year ladder is a 5555 ladder in which you stake $100 for 5555 every year for 15 years. Yeah, so that's essentially what I'm talking about, except his is that's a little more, that's this right here. That's just doing this once a year. And that's, so it's essentially the same idea, it's just to a lesser degree. So if he's doing this every year for 15 years, yeah, it's you're compounding over the course of time. But with what I'm saying is you're doing this on a more frequent basis. If you do it monthly, you're maximizing and optimizing the frequency. When you optimize the frequency of doing this, even if it's with a smaller amount, it naturally is going to build laterally and horizontally as well as vertically, because you're staking for 15 years. So the staking for 15 years gives you those massive returns vertically because you're staking one time for 15 years and it gives you that long yield, that high yield. But stacking it up, stacking horizontally and doing this on a more frequent basis this way, instead of just 1 year, 1 year, 1 year, you're literally doing it monthly. So you're like, ladder here, ladder here, ladder here, 12 times in a year. You're now building laterally and horizontally. Over the course of decades, that lateral movement will actually start to look like a parabola in and of itself because they're stacked on top of each other. And with the rolling over principle, it compounds even to a much higher degree. So not only are you compounding this way vertically, but you're compounding horizontally this way because you're taking advantage of the 15-year stake. So his idea is just a watered down version of mine, essentially. If that makes sense. Sorry, I have asked additional questions above and you have answered it. Thanks so much. Yeah, my pleasure. That's what I'm here for. Hex Pulse dude. I mean, I just want to share this knowledge with as many hexagons as possible because it's a game changer. And the thing is, it's like, this is just Hex. This is not PulseChain. This is not PulseX. Those are going to do great as well. And you can stake those too. In fact, Richard just came out with a tweet yesterday that says that you'll be able to stake PulseX, which is fucking awesome. But, just to understand Hex, it's like, it's a game changer in and of itself. I'd like to see a function of the spreadsheet that will show, I would like to see a function of the spreadsheet that will show how much yield I can expect a month, given the inputs you're using for this Snowball calculator. I'd like to see a function of the spreadsheet that will show how much yield I can expect a month. Yeah, so what you'd have to do, it would take a long time to do, but basically you'd create this chart and you'd have to create in between each one of these years, you'd have to create 12 additional rows of this data. It would just take a long time. And that's why I couldn't show in my video when I'm going through these slides. That's why I couldn't show this on a monthly time frame. This is what a snowballing ladder looks like on a yearly scale. But this is why I couldn't show you 12 individual stakes in between these staking ladders here, just because the data it's just so much data, and you'd have to literally go in this right here and just create a bunch of rows in between each. You have to create 180 rows here and have all this data for all the rows. So it's just a ton of data, but you can get away with getting the idea down with just this, which is really the whole point. Is the calc in this video also PLS? No, the calculator in this video is just Hex. At the Hex Pulse, dude, 3 years and start collecting. Yep. Okay, that is what I was getting at. The first stake in the strategy starts in 1 year. Makes sense, mate. And then get the longer bonus. Love your work. Thanks. Yeah, no problem, man. Yeah, just glad you're able to understand it. It can be a little daunting at first. I did 6 month and 1 year stakes because I didn't really believe in the project and they ended. I made some money, but should have just done 3+ year long stakes. Why not go for a 5555, David? Why not go for a Cuatro Cinco? Not advice, but just some food for thought. Can you explain in the Google Sheet how you computed the payout per day, USD per day and USD per year? How do you mean? Can you explain in the Google Sheet how you computed the payout per day, USD per day, and USD per year? So the chart has the US value right here. Okay. This is the initial USD value. So all of those values you're talking about, they're right here. I mean, it'll literally, it's got all the data here for you. So once you create, here, I can actually minimize this a little bit so you can see everything. See? So now you can see the entire thing. So, you know, if you're talking 37 hex, that's about $8. Okay. And the end stake value at the end of that year would be about $11. That's the return you're getting. So your return is 50% in this model right here. This is the mild case. So literally all those inputs, they're on this chart. So if you want to see them, just download the chart and you can put these in numbers in for yourself. You can see them. I mean, it's very self-explanatory. I obviously really believe in HEX, PLS, and PLSX now. Yeah, well, I sure hope so, David, because this shit is and the great thing about all of this, David, is we're so early still. I mean, Pulse hasn't even come out yet. I mean, we're so early. Before the PLS staking news, people holding PLS were saying they want a 20-for-1 the ratio. Now people are talking about not even selling PLSX. Now, yeah, it's nuts. 20-to-1 ratio for PLS to PLSX. That's crazy, man. I mean, I'm not going to trade any of my PLSX for any Pulse. Like yeah, that's just me. Can you explain how the AMM bot works with ratios? Yeah, so so with the AMM bot fixer, the fixer bot, what it does is when you have liquidity that's coming into a different ecosystem from the Ethereum chain, you have to understand that the price of certain assets on the Ethereum chain are trading based on the US dollar right now, a lot of them. So when you're liquidity mining, when you're pairing those two things, let's say you have Chainlink and USDC, when you're liquidity mining those, you have to provide the same amount of assets to each side. It's like an equation. It's like a math equation, right? Whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other side in a math equation. It's the same thing with liquidity pairs. So, but you're now, because you're building a new DEX on a different chain, now there's some discrepancies there, because if you bridge over liquidity from the ETH chain over to the Pulse chain, a new chain that doesn't have any USD backed value, now the ratios are skewed, right? Because if you bring over 100 Chainlink, how do you know what that value is on the Pulse chain? You don't, because it's not tied to anything. So what the AMM fixer bot does is it goes in there and it looks at the pairs on the ETH chain, and it looks at the ratios at what those are paired at. And so the ratio that it's, for example, for Ethereum to Pulse, it's about a 1.2 million percent, or 1.2 million price difference. So if you brought over one Ethereum to the Pulse chain, because the Pulse chain is, the value of the one Pulse is not equivalent to one value of the Ethereum of one ETH. So because they're different values, you have to fix the ratio to make it balanced. Because if you bring over one ETH is trading for what, like 3K right now? So if it's trading for 3K, well, one Pulse is not worth 3K, because there's much more Pulse tokens than there are Ethereum tokens. So you have to fix that ratio, and that's what the AMM fixer bot does. It goes in and it takes the square root of the Ethereum, and then it multiplies the Pulse chain side by 1.2 million. And that equalizes the ratios so that you get a fair ratio of Ethereum to Pulse. Hope that makes sense. Wow, man, you're the first stranger that actually pronounced my last name correctly. Most of the time it comes out as Sizzles. Zells? I think that's what it is. Zells, right? Looks pretty straightforward to me. All right, this is so good. Thanks so much for your channel and wisdom. Yeah, my pleasure, my brother. Just wanting to spread the love and do my part. I love helping people. That's like one of my core values is I love helping people. And when you help others and you pay it forward, it gives you fulfillment. And there's a lot of people out there with a lot of money and a lot of materialistic things who don't know how to be happy, who don't know how to internalize happiness. And happiness is not only is it a choice, but it's also something that you can receive by helping others and paying it forward. And so when you get a great amount of fulfillment when you do something that you love and when you do something that directly benefits other people. And that's what life is really about. It's about relationships and people. I was referring to the small boxes under the main table. Look at where it says payout per day hex. Okay, let me see. Let's run to the small boxes under the main table. Look at where it says payout per day hex. Okay, what are you talking about? Payout per day in hex. Right here? Or are you talking about right here? Oh, right here. Yeah, so what this is doing is it's taking the total amount of hex that you're earning in this staking ladder, and it's dividing it by the amount of days that you have that ladder staked. So in this case, you're gaining, let's see, total hex, 2,597. And you're dividing that by 5,555. And that gives you, okay, so 0.46. So this is a little off. Probably because it's okay. No, it's not off because it's accounting for these stakes that are getting unstaked, right? There's some stakes in here that are going to get unstaked, which, and you can decide what to do with it after that. So that's going to affect this payout per day because it's not just all of this money is not staked for 5555. If all of this money was staked for 5555, then the payout per day would be 0.46. But since you have stakes that are maturing in year 1, 2, and through year 14, there's a little bit of a gap there, which decreases the size of the hex payout per day. So that's why the hex payout per day is 0.37 and not 0.46, because it's accounting for all the stakes being unstaked in each previous year. So I hope that does that answer your question? I hope that makes sense. Gee, with that ratio, PLS would start at 100x the way it's going. Your thoughts? Yeah. I mean, so if the AMM fixer bot didn't fix the price, then you'd basically be pumping everybody's pulse bags right off the get-go, like a shit ton, and most likely people would sell. Because I mean, who's not going to sell at least some at 100x? I mean, you'd be stupid not to. Never mind, silly me. I read the formulas. I was understanding now how the payout per day was computed. Great job explaining everything. I love your strategy. Yeah, no problem, Tim. My pleasure. Do you do price calls? 1 year price for Hex, Pulse, and PLSX? Yeah, no, not even going to attempt the price prediction on these, just because there's too many variables that go into it. There's way too many variables that go into it to even like speculate on where they could go. So it's really hard to say. Thanks for sharing the ladder tool. Was hoping hopping to a version that would be monthly and take each year that ends and putting back in for each. Yeah. So the way around that, Go Fast James, is what you could do is just keep track of it on a monthly basis. So just fill one of these out every month, right? And then as each month goes on, you have a new one because you're creating a new one every month. And then once your first stake matures after 12 months, then you could create another one, come back to this one, and then just add any of the additional profits or rolling over into the new one you're creating at month 13. And then just continue making them every month and just keeping a record of them. And then you can just go back and keep a record of it. I know it's a little bit more inconvenient, but I mean, it's whatever, it's better than nothing. What are your thoughts on liquid loans? Look interesting and the potential great pump options for PLS. Yeah, I mean, I haven't done too much research on liquid loans. I do know about them. I have watched a few videos on them. I have visited the website, and they seem to be like a bunch of good dudes. And I did watch the video on like the haunted strategy or whatever, and it could be cool. But the only thing that I don't like is just leverage. When you leverage trade, I mean, I've been wrecked in leverage trading. A lot of people have been wrecked. A lot of people have learned by getting wrecked in leverage trading. So, but in that aspect, I don't like the fact that you can get liquidated, but I understand that that is could be a necessary evil. And I do like the fact that you can't get liquidated unless the price of PLS retraces. I think it's 98% is what they say on there. I think that's correct. Is you only get liquidated if there's like 98% retracement to the downside. So that, I mean, that's better, but like still these coins, I mean, Pulse and PulseX, they can move very quickly. And I mean, we saw an 80% dump in HEX like not that long ago in November. 80%. So and HEX has been around for 2 years already. So could PulseX and PulseChain dump 80 to 90%? Yeah, I think they could at certain points. I think people, if they take profits, I definitely like, and the fact that crypto's cyclical, I think that those, especially being new coins, new coins on the market, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility for the volatility to go up, obviously parabolically, but also to retrace pretty hard down too, up to maybe 90%. And so in that aspect, I don't want to see people get liquidated. I don't want to get liquidated myself, but I do see in a way, it's like compounding. In a way, it's like compounding your gains more because you're using loans to take out more. And then when it goes up 15%, you essentially like take out another, you essentially take out another loan, right? And then pay down the previous one, essentially, so on and so forth. And then you can make even higher gains. So it's cool. I think it's a cool strategy. I think the USDL token would be interesting as a stable coin. I think that'll be interesting because now you have somewhere to take profits and hopefully keeps the value. So that'll be interesting. But yeah, we'll see. Well, I'm excited to see how it plays out. I ultimately, I think there's going to be a lot of great projects on the PulseChain, and I'll be covering a lot of those projects in the future, I'm sure. Just like creators cover projects on different blockchains like Ethereum and Cardano and AVAX and Solana. There's an entire ecosystem below those projects. So I imagine there's going to be other projects that will be good projects in the PulseChain ecosystem too. Let's see. Good question. The Hex Pulse dude, some guy named Hadron keeps spamming about you need this for Pulse. Yeah, I've heard about Hadron as well. I actually I like both projects. I like Hadron and I like Liquid Loans. I think they're going to be good projects. I've actually I've looked into a little bit more into Hadron than I have Liquid Loans. I like Hadron. I think it's going to be a good project. But again, it's not a Richard Hart project, so it's tough. It's it's hard to say how the market will respond to them. And it's hard to talk about them. Does this spreadsheet work on Excel? The values don't fit in with some of the data. Keep getting hashtag name filled in a lot of these cells. That's a good question. I don't know if he's work on Excel. He might. Let me see. Let's see. How could we file export? Where's export? Download. Yeah. Okay. You can download these to a Microsoft Excel. So if you come over here to File, go to Download, and just click Microsoft Excel. It'll turn it into an Excel spreadsheet. Now, I don't know if the values will transfer over the same way. So if that's what you're talking about, if you save it as an Excel spreadsheet and then open it up in Excel, maybe Excel doesn't recognize some of the same functions that the Google Docs translator has. I don't know. I don't use Excel. I actually had Excel a while ago, but it expired, so I just used Google Docs for now. Do you know of any other incentive tokens that have skyrocketed? I was watching the quant game stream, and they brought up the incentive token and how nothing is protecting it from being sold off. Yeah, so actually, the Twitter space, you would so if you could see this, I'm in the Twitter space right now of HEX Orca. I'll go ahead and I'll link it. Let me see. If you just go to Twitter, you can get in on it. Let's see. Let's see. How do I HEX Orca? Copy link to tweet. Okay. So I'm gonna tweet his Twitter space, and if you want to join it, that's exactly what they're talking about. And we were talking about this earlier. Is the incentive token. So and Hex Orca, he has a fantastic model. He's been thinking about the game theory behind the incentive token and how it can be used as a basically he's trying to find utility for the incentive token. So I'll go ahead and link that for you. You can join that Twitter space. You can they're talking about it right now. Yeah, so unless it has utility, I was listening to Hex Orca's Twitter space, some good stuff being discussed. Yeah. It's good. I mean, I think that Hex Orca came up with a good idea. He's basically he wants to monetize time with the incentive token. Essentially, was the idea. Basically, wants to take the Hex protocol and apply it to the incentive token and the PulseChain. So basically, incentivize people to hold the incentive token by earning PulseChain. Was essentially the idea. What's my Twitter? It's I'll link it as well. It's at a pure Escobar. That is my Twitter there. All right, there's a few other questions that I had written down. Let me see. So we answered this one. Jeez. Discussing PulseX staking and earning the incentive token. Yep, we just talked about that. Why buy Hex when you can buy Pulse? I got that question in my comments. Why not buy them both? Why not buy them both? Scratch that one. Talking about the number of T-shares diminishing over time as to not be able to earn the same rewards the next stake. We talked about that. T-shares are going to increase over the course of time, which means your staking ladders, in theory, should decrease slightly each time you do a staking ladder each year. Low liquidity with Hex in the future. I don't think there's going to be low liquidity with Hex specifically. I think there could be a lot of Hex locked up for longer periods of time. And if that's the case, then yeah, there could be, I guess, an issue with liquidity, maybe. But there's always going to be people who sell and take profits. So that keeps the liquidity flowing in a cycle to new hands, right? So I don't think there's going to be a problem with liquidity. Clarifying that the following year, when your first stake matures, it might not be as much as the previous year's stake ladder. Yep, I just clarified that with the T-shares. It's because of the T-shares and the price of Hex. Can't bridge EHEX over to the PulseChain. Someone was saying that they were under the impression that you can't bridge over EHEX over to the PulseChain. You can, once the bridges come out, you can bridge over EHEX to the PulseChain, and you can swap your EHEX for PHEX if you decide to. What you cannot do is you cannot stake your EHEX on the PulseChain. If you have stakes already, you'll get copies of those stakes on the PulseChain, but you cannot directly stake your HEX on the PulseChain. So that's something you cannot do. Can someone rug this in the future? Yeah, I mean, technically, the origin address could rug us all, right? I mean, the origin address controls has a lot of hex in their wallet. Technically, they could dump on the market. Has the origin address ever sold? No. And what if? And the counter argument to that is, well, what if the U.S. what if what if the U.S. government prints money, infinite amounts of money into existence, which they are? Isn't that the same thing as rugging everybody? Because they're inflating everybody's dollar. So your dollar doesn't have as much buying power. Isn't that the same thing as rugging everybody? I mean, it's a little different, but it's essentially the same idea. You're slowly bleeding people to death over the course of time rather than just rugging everybody at once. So hope that answers that question. Why will EHEX have any value when PHEX comes out? Why is anyone going to support EHEX with them gas fees when PHEX will be so much cheaper? It's going to dump badly. That was the comment that I got in my video. So this one is it's a little tricky because the price of EHEX, I do believe the price of EHEX will dump when the PulseChain comes out. I just think that there will be people who want to bridge over their EHEX into PulseX. And I also think that, I mean, obviously there's going to be some level of liquidity that's locked up in stakes with EHEX. So it's not going to completely dump to zero per se, but I do think it will dump. But eventually, at some point, the price of PHEX will be more expensive than the price of PHEX, or excuse me, the other way around. Eventually, at some point, the price of PulseHEX on the PulseChain will be more expensive than the price of Ethereum HEX on the Ethereum chain, even with the gas fees. So at that point, it doesn't make sense to continue buying PHEX. I mean, unless you're just dollar cost averaging over the course of time, that's a good strategy. But if the price of EHEX is lower than the price of PulseHEX, even with the fees, what are people going to start doing? They're going to start buying back up the Ethereum HEX. And eventually it will reach price parity. In my opinion, I believe that eventually they will reach price parity to where PHEX and EHEX are moving in unison with one another, especially when you have the bridges of EHEX and PHEX, because that locks the bond that is Hart's law, is the liquidity bonding pair determines the price movement. That's what Hart's law basically says. I can't remember the exact verbiage that Richard Hart used to describe Hart's law, but that's the essential idea, is that they will move in unison with the amount of liquidity that's paired on the PulseX. So that answers that one. And the last question I have here is, why don't you just start the monthly $100 staking Snowball at 5,555 right off the bat? And next month, 555, and so on. So in 15 years, you will have 15 years worth of 15-year stakes coming due. That's a good question. And that's really the answer to that question is just personal preference. That's if you want to do it that way, if you want to lock your money up for 15 years, it's a good strategy. I mean, because in 15 years, you're going to have these like massive compounded ladders that are going to be starting. Basically, once 15 years is up, you're going to start having these ladders that mature that have just accrued massive interest for you over 15 years. So if that sounds enticing to you, by all means, do a snowballing ladder and just, you can backload it, right? So where your majority of your money is coming out in these longer stakes, the 15-year stakes. If you really want to, I mean, if you just would rather not deal with laddering and you just like, all right, I'm just going to take $100 a month and I'm just going to 5,555 it every single month for 15 years. And for the next, I'm going to commit to doing that $100 or whatever amount of money that you have to spend, disposable income that you don't care about. If you wanted to, you could just say, yeah, I'm just going to 555 this bitch every time. And just in 15 years, I'm going to delay my gratification for 15 years. And then in 15 years, every single month, you'll have those 555 stakes maturing, and then you're just sitting real pretty. If you want to use that strategy, that's great too. That comes at the risk though. And the risk is maneuverability and options. And you won't be able to take advantage of market fluctuations, like the boom and bust cycles of crypto. You won't be able to take advantage of those in the first 15 years. You would only be able to take advantage of those in once 15 years hits and later, if that makes sense. So that answers that question. And really, again, it's personal preference. So those were the questions that I had written from the most common questions I was getting from the video. The OA can rug us if it wants HEX to be a completely destroyed product and kill itself. The OA is very closely connected to HEX and its success. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And the OA could rug us all. It's very true. I personally don't think that the OA would do that, but it's possible. Here's a question. Is it only the HEX in the wallet we sacked from that gets copied over? I mean, does it have to be in that same wallet to copy over? Is it only the HEX in the wallet we sacked from that gets copied over? So whatever wallet you sacked from, yeah, that is the wallet that you will get your PLS tokens or your PulseChain tokens. If you have liquid HEX sitting in a wallet or any ERC20 tokens, it doesn't matter what tokens they are. If they're ERC20 tokens, meaning they're from the Ethereum blockchain, you're going to get copies of all those ERC20s on the PulseChain. In addition to that, Richard Hart has also said that any NFTs that you have on the Ethereum network are also going to get copied over to the PulseChain, as well as other tokens like USDC, because USDC on the Ethereum chain is actually an ERC20. So you would actually get copies of your USDC on the Ethereum chain. You'd get copies of that on the PulseChain when it goes live. So I hope that answers your question. So if you like whatever ERC20 tokens that you have in your wallet, you're going to get copies of all those. That's literally what he means by the biggest airdrop in the world is you're getting copies of like every single ERC20 tokens getting copied over. When you bridge over your EHEX to PHEX, can you then stake your bridged EHEX? Wait, hold on. All right. So when you bridge over your EHEX to PHEX, okay, can you then stake your bridged EHEX then on PHEX? So if we had 400,000 HEX, could you then have 800,000 HEX on PHEX to stake? Would that be the case? Okay, so if you have 400,000 Ethereum HEX on the Ethereum chain right now, okay, first and foremost, when the Pulse chain goes live, you're going to get copies of all those EHEX on the Pulse chain. Okay. So you have two copies. Now you have 800,000 HEX total, but you have 400,000 in Pulse HEX, the Pulse version of HEX, and you have 400,000 of the Ethereum version of HEX. Now, once the bridges come to the PulseX DEX, okay, let me clarify these words because a lot of these words are similar. Once the bridges are live from Ethereum to the PulseX decentralized exchange, that then gives you the ability to turn Ethereum HEX into Pulse HEX and vice versa. That's what a bridge is. The liquidity pairs, that's what those are. That you're literally pairing and you're providing liquidity for both sides so that people can swap those tokens over. So technically, once you get the copies, yes, you could swap all of your Ethereum HEX for Pulse HEX, and now you have 800,000 Pulse HEX. And now that you have 800,000 Pulse HEX, you could, in theory, stake all those on the Pulse chain. What you cannot do is you have 400,000 PHEX here and 400,000 EHEX here. What you cannot do is take your Ethereum HEX, bring it over to the PulseChain as Ethereum HEX, and then stake it on the PulseChain. You cannot do that. If that makes sense. So let's see. I don't know why I showed like this screen the entire time, because literally that's probably a little bit better. Let's see. When you're financially independent, unless you are now, what are you going to do the rest of your life? Continue to help people. That's my calling. My purpose is to help people in any way that I can. So I'm committed to the crypto ecosystem, and specifically, I mean, there's a lot of projects I like in crypto that aren't Richard Hart projects. Richard Hart projects are my favorite. But I plan to create my own, I guess, business within crypto, right? So being able to, I like to help people. I'd like to help onboard people by creating my own course. I've actually started my own course of like creating my own fundamental course, like how to understand crypto at a fundamental level, how to navigate the ecosystem in general. So that like literally for people that are like brand spanking new, have like never been in crypto before, just helping them onboard correctly. So I've already started the process of creating that course, and then enjoying my time with like my family is important to me as well, and having the ability to maneuver and travel. So those are the my long-term goals. Soundmind TV. When you sacked your hex, it is no longer yours and is gone. Whatever address you sacked from is where your PLSX, if that's the sack you're talking about, will be airdropped when PLS is live. Let me see if that's correct. So when you sacked your hex, it's no longer yours and gone. Whatever address you sacked from is where your PLSX, if that's the, yeah, that's correct, will be airdropped when PLS. Yeah. So if you sacked for PLS or PLSX, then you can't have any expectations of profits from the work of others. So you're basically saying that you took a loss on that transaction. You sacrifice for the freedom of movement, the freedom of assembly, and the freedom of speech. And so that wallet now owns whatever money that you decided to sacrifice to. And at some point in the future, you'll receive free tokens that may or may not be worth a lot of value someday. That's essentially the thesis behind sacrificing. At David, it's the copied ERC20 tokens I'm talking about that get copied over to PulseChain. All needs to be in the same wallet that we sacked from for it to show up on PulseChain. Yes. So it's whatever, like it doesn't have to be the same wallet you sacked from to get copies of your ERC20s. So if you have 5 wallets, right? Let's say you have 5 MetaMask wallets. If you've got ERC20s in all 5 of those wallets, it doesn't, like, you're going to get copies of those ERC20s on the PulseChain. It doesn't have to be from the one wallet you sacked from. The only way that it has to be the wallet you sacked from is for that reason specifically, is it needs to be from the wallet you sacked from. If you sacrifice from the specific wallet for like PulseX or PulseChain, then that is the wallet that you will receive your PLS tokens or your PLSX tokens. But for just the ERC20s that get copied over, those can be in any like MetaMask wallet, any wallet that you have the private keys to and the seed words to, then you will get copies of all those ERC20s. So my TV, no, not the same wallet. Literally just answer that. Every month you stake $100 worth of HEX for 15 years. Is that correct? Do you stake for different times? I'm not getting how you can free up your HEX to buy dips when the HEX is locked up for 15 years. No, Matt Pickstone. So it's you've almost got the concept. And I'll just here. Let me do this. You're on the right track, but it's not. That's not the idea. Okay, I'm going to break this down very, very, very simply. Okay, the idea is that you're creating one new ladder every month. One ladder consists of 15 stakes. Each stake consists of X amount of HEX. Okay, that's for you to decide. Now, each amount of HEX is going to be staked for 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 years. And you will repeat that process every single month. Now, if you execute that correctly, then your first stake, the first ladder that you build, the first stake of that ladder will mature after 12 months. That's how your HEX is freed up, is because you're creating the staking ladder, which consists of 15 individual stakes in and of that ladder. And so that is how, after the 13th month, that's how you're able to have those HEX freed up, or, that the ability to maneuver. You have options as to what you'd like to do with that HEX. You can roll it over. You can include the interest plus the principal, plus any gains, plus the additional dry powder that you have that you're committing to do every month, and create a new ladder, not just a new stake, but a new ladder of 15 stakes in that ladder again, and roll it over. You could also take profits on that. But the idea is that you're taking advantage of the 15-year APY because you're staking longer and you're getting a better rate. And then you're also taking advantage of every year prior to that, so that you can take advantage of those market fluctuations like you're talking about. So you almost have it, but you're not quite there yet. All right, David, have a good one. Take care. Peace. Hey, CryptoViz, I'm going to sleep. Great stream, man. Keep it up. It's great for the HEX community, and all the information needs to get out. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Thanks, David. We just need to link that wallet to PulseChain. Yep. Sound Mind TV, when PulseChain goes live, yes. So if you use MetaMask, it's literally one setting that you change. On default, it is Ethereum. You change the PulseChain and wallet. Yep. All right. So Sound Mind TV, thumbs up. Everyone have a good night. All right. So each ladder has 15 stakes that run from 1 year to 15 years. Yes, that is correct, Kat. Each ladder has 15 stakes that run from 1 year to 15 years. And really, it's personal preference. Like you could literally set it up to where you have one ladder that has like 30 stakes in it, right? You can create a ladder that has 50 stakes in it if you wanted to get really, really granular. You'd have to do some math as to like how to spread it out over the 15. Like, how many of those stakes would you want to put for 15-year stakes? How many of those stakes would you want to put for 14-year stakes? How many of those stakes would you want to put for 13-year stakes? So you'd have to do some math as to like how you want to allocate those 50 stakes in that staking ladder. But the simplest way to do it is to just do 15 stakes in one ladder and repeat that process on a monthly basis. Got it now. Thanks, David. Wasn't sure about the ladder. Yeah, no problem, Matt. Glad you got it. Let's say we're in a bear market and you have some HEX free up. Would you buy the dip or would you restake the principal? So that's exactly one of the main benefits of using a snowballing ladder. What? That is one of the benefits of using the snowballing ladder, is it gives you the ability to maneuver and it gives you options. Okay. So that's like one of the main benefits of doing it, because you're creating a ladder, you're creating a stake for each year all the way up to 15. That gives you the ability to take advantage of market booms and market busts. So if there's a bull run in like 2022, or not 2022, let's say there's a bull run in 2024 or 2025. Well, now, because you have money coming out that you're having stakes that are maturing every month, now you can decide, okay, it looks like this is a market cycle peak. I'm going to go ahead and take profits out of this HEX. I'm going to transfer to stable, or I'm going to cash out, take some profits into something a little bit more stable, wait a few months until the market corrects, and then buy back lower and then stake it. Because then you're getting more bang for your buck as far as the new stakes go. You could also just say, you know what, fuck that. I'm not going to, I'm just going to DCA pretty much. I'm just going to commit to creating a new ladder every month and just commit to that idea alone. And I don't care about the boomer bust cycles. I'm just going to continue creating those ladders on a monthly basis. I don't care. And maybe you don't care. Maybe you just keep doing that through the bull run and through the bear market. And over the course of 15 years, that's going to compound in and of itself. So it's up to you. I mean, like, you can make the strategy your own. You can tailor it to your preferences. Maybe you don't want to do it on a monthly basis. I would argue that it's less optimal to do it less than monthly. And if you haven't seen my video on that, you go check out my video. I'll put it in the chat here just a second. Shareable link. If you haven't seen the snowball strategy video, there it is. You can go check it out. I literally break down, like, in very vivid details of the strategy. You can also rewatch this stream because this stream covered it quite extensively as well. I answered a lot of questions from that video. And that will give you the ability to buy the dip or just continue to stake. So I hope that answers your questions, Tim T. Tim T868 iffy. Is that supposed to say something? Timtify or some shit? I don't know. New York restrictions. Bought ETH on Coinbase. Can't transfer to Coinbase wallet until 16 days. Is there any way I can just get this ETH into my wallet faster? I want to sacrifice for PulseX before the 25th. Yeah, Coinbase is a bitch, isn't it? Coinbase is yeah. Unfortunately, I don't think there's any way to. I don't think there's any that I know of, at least. There's no way to forego that process of having your funds frozen for 16 days. It's bullshit, because that's the whole point of decentralization. That's the whole point of crypto, is to give the people control of their money. But what can you do, man? Just trying to buy HEX SAC for some PulseX, but need a way to get this to my wallet before SAC is up. Thank you so much for the videos. Yeah, no problem. Always happy to help. But yeah, it's hard to say, like, you know, if you got it locked up there, I to be honest, I don't know if there's anything you can do to speed up that process. Maybe try reaching out to the support of Coinbase. I know that they suck. They don't get back to you very frequently, but you could try. Coinbase got me on hold for 7 days as well. Yeah, fucking Coinbase, man. I don't enjoy Coinbase very much, but what can you do? It's like one of the only ways to on-ramp fiat, so it's kind of a necessary evil. Any other exchanges to recommend for New Yorkers? Binance.us. You can do Binance.us. That's just as painful, though. Binance is also kind of a bitch to work with. I use Kraken, like to onboard fiat. I use Kraken. You can do it that way and then transfer that way. Kraken's a little bit better. I haven't used Bitrex. I don't know about Bitrex or Bitrex. Who else? What other exchanges are there? Gemini. I think there's Gemini. Gemini might be okay. I think they do fiat. So those are a few options for you. Oh man, I'm getting tired, guys. I think I'm gonna call it a night. So you can follow on Instagram and Twitter at @ApureEscobar. And if you have any other questions, you can comment below. I've answered quite a few in the stream, so you can go back and rewatch the stream. One last question. What is the best method to spend crypto gains? Some UK banks are restricting payments from Coinbase. What is the best method to spend crypto gains? Some US banks are restricting payments from Coinbase. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, that's a good question. I don't have the answer to that question. What is the best method to spend crypto gains? I mean, you can always just turn your gains into dry powder, like USDC, and then wait for like a dip. But or you could just cash out. Obviously, you can cash out of Coinbase. It's tough though. There's a lot of restrictions coming out. But anyway, that's it for me, guys. I will catch you all later. Maybe I'll do a stream tomorrow. I should be having an interview with Hex Orca here coming up soon. So stay tuned for that. And then also, in light of reaching 1,000 subscribers, I'm going to be doing a giveaway. I'm going to be giving away one of my Beast Bro NFTs. So stay tuned for a video for that. That'll be coming up soon too. Other than that, cheers. Take care, guys. You guys are awesome. Love you all. And I will talk to you soon. Peace.